The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mike, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Open line through till 1 today. So the floor is yours, whatever you want to talk about. You heard in the news a number of MHKs have expressed concern about how a referendum will be held regarding the assisted dying legislation. And lots more to talk about, and by all means do get in touch. Call 66 13 68, text 166 177, email studio@manxradio.com and WhatsApp 166 177, but you need to put us in your contacts and stick 07624 in front of it. Just a quick word about the mountain road. The matrix signs from Sulby to the mountain, Hilbury to the mountain, Bagarrow to the mountain are all showing fog on the mountain road. Warning, fog, use headlights. Also, Albert Road and Barrule Park are showing that. So I think we can take that as read. There is fog on the mountain road. And so let's keep it safe, shall we? Yes, the number of MHKs have expressed concern about how a referendum will be held and the need to update the Isle of Man's referendum legislation. It all happened this morning. In House of Keys, Chief Minister has been facing questions from his colleague at this morning's sitting of Keys. Some think his calls for a public vote are an attempt to delay progress in the assisted dying bill. You'll hear Onken MHK Rob Callister, Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper, Glenn Faber and Peel MHK and Tim Crookall, and the heir of Michael MHK, Alfred Cannon.
It really does worry me. And when I stood up the other day in this House, I was very much in support of actually this referendum. But the more and more I'm hearing the answers, and you're given, this seems to be throwing it well into the long grass.
So the Chief Minister is proposing that government, without having consulted with his ministerial colleagues, but the government would rush through an amendment to the Referendum Act to make the Referendum Act we have specific to the assisted dying referendum. So does that mean we would lose the ability to hold referendums on other matters as well? Or is he actually talking about a more comprehensive piece of work? But I'm completely thrown by this whole suggestion, if I'm honest.
The House gave Dr. Allenson permission to bring his private members forward a couple of years ago. Should we not have been having this conversation 2 years ago, just after we gave him that permission, and not having to have gone through the last 2 years of evidence and everything else? Do you think that would have been a better way around it, rather than doing it now? And this is now being seen as a stalling moment, if you like, on this bill.
I think members are trying to complicate this deliberately. I think if you go and review what's already been done, the way it's been set out, I think even the Brexit referendum legislation, the act specifically to conduct the referendum, was relatively simplistic in the way that it was presented.
Any thoughts on this? Do you think this is a fuss about nothing? Do you think it's just people playing politics, or is there something in this? Would you like to have a chat about it? Would you like to make your opinion known? Then by all means do get in touch. John said also, it's important to me. I can only think our present government stops and thinks of the long-term ramifications of the removal of the bishop's vote in Tynwald. My main concern is this is almost like a prerequisite to further things our current administration have in mind. I do hope that religious education is left alone in schools. Seems nothing to be off limits with some of our politicians, and I consider their actions at times reckless. Concerned John, that is. Alfred Cannon was on Breakfast Show today on Manx Radio. The House of Keys, of course, meeting today, and this assisted dying legislation. The heir of Michael MHK, Mr. Cannon, Chief Minister, of course, but he's putting this through. This is a private member's amendment. He wants a referendum for the assisted dying legislation. So Tynwald can't make the decision. It has to go to a referendum. You're assuming now that we're talking about a referendum. If not, I mean, it would take ages to organise, and there'd have to be a period of consultation with the two sides and the public, the voters. So will this happen at the same time as the next general election? Mr. Cannon wants this referendum. He was on Manx Radio's breakfast show this morning to answer why he wants a referendum.
My view is that if we're going to embark on this change, and I think there is a lot of support for change, then we need to do it as a society. And we need to make that decision and support both the healthcare service through this change, but also support others in society who may well feel strongly against this type of change in terms of our healthcare delivery. And it would simply be done on a single vote basis, as it is in an election. I expect there would be a single question about whether or not, as it was in New Zealand, whether or not you support the assisted dying legislation. And it's a fairly simplistic matter in terms of that administration of a referendum along the lines of an election.
Is it that simple, though? Because you've spent weeks in the House of Keys hearing from experts who are highly qualified in their field, very experienced, and they don't seem to have quite come to a consensus themselves in the medical field. Is it that simple?
Well, certainly not from a legislative process in terms of everything that's attached to this. I think the piece of legislation that we've got at the moment is not in the right place. I think, unfortunately, that it has actually been watered down even from where the original proposer of this bill had it placed in terms of 6 months healthcare professionals not to initiate the conversations. I think it was very much along the lines of what they have got in New Zealand now. We don't even have this as a regulated service at the moment. I think there is still a chance to change that as it goes through the process. But people need to take a considered decision once they actually see the legislation and understand fully its impact. And I think that it's not just a single person issue. As I said, this has impacts on families. It has impacts on healthcare professionals. It has impacts potentially on other groups, disadvantaged groups in society. And we need to be clear as a society about the decision that we are making if we are going to change that contract that we have with the healthcare service, which at the moment, as I say, is about care and the sustaining of life. And we need to be together as a society if we are going to change it to the ending of life as well. And at the moment, Sean, I can see no clear evidence that this has a full public mandate.
There's the member for Ayr and Michael, Mr. Cannon, talking about the possibility of a referendum for assisted dying. Well, we're 27 months away from a general election. The Keys election's going to be on Thursday, 24th of September 2026. 27 months away. Do you think it should be wrapped up in a general election if this is going to happen, or that we should have one in the meantime? Terry said, I'm with Mr. Cannon regarding having a referendum. Why are the other pro-change so worried? If the public want this, then they should have nothing to worry about. Mr. Cannon said this is for society to decide. By implication, I think he's saying it's not for the politicians to decide. You got any thoughts? Juan's first with us today. Hi, Juan.
How was your weekend, Andy?
Very nice, thank you, yes.
Good, busy weekend. The Full Moon Festival was on, and there's some excellent musicians and artists over here. We really have got some good local talent over here, which is it's really nice to see them performing at these events. And a great La Columkilly on Friday, which is an old Manx traditional fair, and it's great to see that people are running that and keeping it going as well.
And the weather held for it as well. That was good.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's great to see the talent, and it's great to see again the old village fairs keeping going as well, which is good. Just jumping on there, just heard John's message into you there before, and yeah, I think you should be concerned about the way things are going. Generally, the way that government are directing the island at the moment with different things, there's definitely something to be concerned about. Howard was mentioning last week about the ANPRs, the number plate recognition, and that conversation last week. Yeah, Howard was correct in that. There was a DOI van which used to park up at various different places around the island with a number recognition in the back, the door that used to open and the camera was sat inside it. So yes, this has been going on. So it's an interesting theory that did they have permission or not, considering that Jane Poole-Wilson is now trying to get legislation for it.
Is it still here?
I have not seen it around for some time, but it was quite active and it was around. And when Howard mentioned it, yes, I do remember that. So it is interesting that they're applying for it through the legislation when it was already here. Now, I don't know when Jane Poole Wilson said it was going to help with serious crime. I don't know how that's actually going to work. And like you said, Andy, I don't know where these cameras are going to be. If they're going to be coming off the boat, then that's fine. But I don't see how it's going to solve serious crime around the island, having ANPRs. And of course, from, I think it's September, October, Isle of Man Constabulary are taking over the harbour police, I believe, from the end of the year. So they're going to have more powers within the ports anyway to be able to go onto that jurisdiction, which they haven't got now.
So, I mean, if the police are going to have that, where do you think they'd have them, though?
Well, I don't know. And I mean, and this is the trouble. When government gets asked specific questions about different things these days, we're having this with the wind turbines, the assisted dying. When they get nailed down to ask specifics on this stuff, they seem to wriggle and dance their way around it. So I think there needs to be more questions asked on where they think this is heading with ANPR, and do they think that's really necessary here?
Well, I mean, if the DOI used it to nick people who didn't have road tax, that's one thing. I mean, that's revenue generation, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing is, if our ANPR can hook up with the UK's and can get, either stolen vehicles or ringers or things like that, or anybody who is, potentially owns the vehicle who's got an arrest warrant against them, then that's quite another matter. But you would have thought that's then got to be at the port.
Exactly my point. As to where these are going, are they going to flood the island with these? I mean, the first port of protection for us is the airport and the sea terminal. And like I say, if the constabulary are taking more effect and influence there from the end of the year anyway, which I've been told they are, then surely that would cover it. And I don't think that they're silly enough not to go through the list of vehicles that are actually going on the boat. They've got 3 hours for it to get here, so they can certainly have a presence, and I think they do have a presence there now. I mean, they have the dogs and the vehicles there now for pulling people in. So I don't believe the constabulary is silly in any way at all when it comes to surveillance. So I just wonder where the ANPR is heading. So maybe Dan Davis can come on, or some of the others, and tell us a little bit more specifics about that.
Well, what would you think will be the downside of ANPR?
Over-regulation and over-control, which I think is where, going back to what John said before, we're having a lot more of controlling influences put on us over time. With the banking system going on to digital banking. That's another thing this week as well. 45 banks closing in Australia. Westbank closing all its branches in certain parts of Australia, and people are saying, well, where are we going to get our money from? And everything's going on to electric. So the brave new world, as they call it, Andy.
My word.
And I think that's where we're heading here. We have to be careful about over legislation. Protecting the island's borders, absolutely 150% agree. But I just worry where the government is slightly heading with some of this stuff sometimes.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Stuart.
Take care, Andy.
All right, good to hear from you. Fred, the government seems to spend the Manx taxpayers' money faster than Usain Bolt on nearly the Olympics, on rubbish referendums, consultations. Also, not one of them has got any interest in tidying the Isle of Man up, which I think looks shameful. It's embarrassing not only to Manx people but to visitors. I'm not really proud to be Manx these days. The words of Fred on 807. Thank you also to 068, who said, I went in the Arbel recently at the height of the summer season. The cafe's empty and gutted. The Bay Room Cafe in the museum has closed. Well, that closed ages ago, didn't it? The Bay Room. You can't get a decent cup of tea in the museum. Apparently, the reason is that Manx National Heritage are charging far too much rent. So much for freedom to flourish. The island, I think, is an embarrassment. I can't imagine what visitors think. Still no Peggy in the museum. Sorry, the Isle of Man is closed for the summer. Well, Manx National Heritage do charge rent for their hospitality providers, and I think they put the old lemon tree up for contract a wee while ago. I don't think it's been. I think they announced somebody taken it. Don't know. So can you tell me, is there a tea shop open, the cafe open at the Manx Museum at the moment? A WhatsApp in from. Let me see. This is Trevor regarding assisted dying. But first, we'll go to Peter, who's with us. Hi, Peter.
Oh, hello, Andy. It's Peter Murcott here. There's a very interesting debate going on, and it's being broadcast on another frequency of Manx Radio. It's about the Chief Minister's motion for a referendum about the law that you've just mentioned. Yeah. And the way the debate's going, it seems, I won't go into any, because it's quite a complicated one, and they've had evidence from the Attorney General, which was most interesting. The way it's going at the moment seems to sound like this, that first of all, the bill would pass into law, i.e. get the royal assent, and then there would be a referendum as to whether it should be brought into force. That's how I seem to understand it. As I say, it's a very complex debate with a lot of questions. The problem with all that, coming back to a comment you just read out about the expenditure of public money, a referendum will cost money. It's bound to, because it's got to be conducted properly. I go back to the point that I've made all the way along, and nobody has made this. Before you even talk about a referendum, about a piece of legislation, you've got, because it's very premature, you've got to go back to the point I've been making all along, and that is that they decided on May the 17th, 2022, that they wanted to make suicide a thing of the past. And my wife tells me that in a well-known store in the Isle of Man, that there is an advertisement or there's some sort of poster which actually makes reference to this motion. Before they even talk about a referendum, they've got to revisit that debate that they had. They've got to decide, what do they want for the Isle of Man? Do they want to make suicide a thing of the past, or don't they? You see, once you introduce and pass into law this bill, you have defeated the aim of making suicide a thing of the past, because you make provision under certain circumstances for suicide. You call it assisted suicide. And herein lies the problem, that they will not admit the obvious and the reality that this bill's about assisted suicide. And so now we're going further and further into the mire. We're talking, not only is, as I've pointed out repeatedly, that the motion that they agreed upon costs money to make suicide a thing of the past. The implementation of the bill is going to cost an unknown amount of money because they haven't costed it out. So you've got money being spent in two self-defeating areas. And until and unless they grasp the nettle and decide what do they want for the Isle of Man, then all these subsequent debates are a waste of time. They're spending a huge amount of legislative time talking about a referendum, which is very, very complicated, without getting down to the matter that I've kept on saying. And so bringing the Attorney General to the bar of the House, meeting this morning, considering and going into a lot of complex questions about the law as it already exists and how they could implement this and what question would they ask, etc., etc. It's totally premature. I really wish that we could get back to the fundamental question before we even start talking about these subsequent questions. And I shall keep on saying this until a little bit of reason emerges in this whole debate, and we actually admit that we're trying to create a suicide prevention strategy and a suicide provision strategy, and you can't have both.
Just go back to when you first came on. You put into words of one syllable what you thought was happening with the bill. Could you just reiterate that?
Right, yes. What is actually happening is the debate seems to be saying, and I've listened to it carefully, that they would, if they agree that they would have a referendum, the way it might happen is that they would put a provision in the bill whereby once it got royal assent, there would be a referendum on whether it should be brought into force, rather like happened, I believe, in New Zealand. They say that the advantage of that would be that the people would know exactly what the bill proposed, whereas if you had a referendum at this stage, they wouldn't know exactly what it proposes because there are still further amendments to be made. And that seems to be the proposition. It's not been voted upon, and because it's led to a huge number of questions. But that, distilling it down to its simplest level, seems to be the way in which the debate's going.
Okay, and that's on AM 1368, isn't it?
Yeah, people ought to listen to it, but I think I just hope that the public will keep in their mind very, very closely that the whole debate and the whole subject is premature. If they want to have a debate, they really need to go back 2 years and ask themselves, do they really want to continue with the suicide prevention strategy, given the fact that they've introduced this bill, or don't they? That is the question.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
thanks for
Thank you
calling.
then, Andy.
Good to hear from you. Thank you for that. Charlie's on now on Mannin Line. Hi, Charlie.
Hi, bye. You have a Facebook page, do you not?
Manx Radio?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever brought up Alaman news and politics?
I think I've heard of that. Why?
Well, I was looking at the weekend there. A survey's been done on shipping costs around Great Britain.
I saw that, and apparently, like for like, the steam packet was the top. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, Guernsey and Jersey are 30 or 50 miles further distance than Liverpool. And we're dearer than them. No wonder the cost of living on the Isle of Man is so dear.
It's always cost. It's always cost money, though, isn't it, Charlie?
Yeah, I know for years that the steam packet have made their money on freight charges. Fair enough, but we now own the steam packet. The people own the steam packet, and we're getting ripped off for it. I think they're talking about referendum and listen to referendums in Timmel this morning. You need to have a referendum on the steam packet.
Well, the Chief Minister said he's going to apparently make... they're going to have a committee, or somebody's going to look into what the steam packet's doing regarding pricing and incentivising, people on the Isle of Man, making it work for us.
Yeah, but they talk about a 5-day deal. Fair enough, you go away for a weekend, it's a 5-day deal. In all my lifetime, have you ever known anybody to have a holiday for 5 days?
No.
I worked with the tourism industry in the 60s and early 70s. People used to come in on the boat on a Saturday morning, and people would go out on the Saturday afternoon back home again. 7 days or 14 days holiday. And at the moment, a fortnight holiday, if you were away for a fortnight now on the steam packet, it's £390 for a car and one.
A lot of money.
No, that's ridiculous. It is. And that's pension rate.
All right. Okay. Charlie, we appreciate that. I'm going to tell you that's something we're going to be put in tomorrow to Deborah Heather. Deborah Heather is the chief exec of Visit Isle of Man. It's kind of the remnants of the tourist board. And Sarah Maltby is the MHK, who's the member. So tomorrow, Deborah Heather and Sarah Maltby will be on from Visit Isle of Man, talking about just that, talking about tourism, visiting, probably talk a bit about TT 2024. So tomorrow, if you've got any questions regarding really anything that's relevant to Visit Isle of Man, how cheap it is to get here, how expensive it is to get here, what the provision is for visitors who come to the Isle of Man. Really, how are we enabling people to do the best job for visitors to the Isle of Man? And also, bluntly, is it possible to make a living in the visiting industry? That's Deborah Heather and Sarah Maltby, MHK, on tomorrow. Sarah's the political member. Deborah Heather is the chief exec of Visit Isle of Man. And that's on tomorrow. Lots of messages in today. The chief minister says this is Texter 753's word. The chief minister doesn't strike me as somebody who takes heed of anyone else's opinion. Well, that's not always a bad thing, is it? Anyway, the ANPR cameras seem to me to be another way of spying on us all, says Alan. The stark truth, says H on 768, stark truth about assisted dying issue is that the answer can't be a flat no. The reason is that this solves nothing and the issue won't go away. This will discriminate against vulnerable people who are forced to suffer against their will, and it'll just continue to turn a blind eye to the suffering which can't be ethical. Says H. Some kind of assistance must be put in place so that people aren't forced to take their own lives while they're still able. This does happen now, says H, but I think it's kept quiet for fear of reprisals. That's H's opinion on assisted dying. C. 387 Andy, ANPR, automatic number plate recognition, is fitted on police traffic cars across and can identify no insurance or road tax, ideal for spotting stolen cars with false plates. I fully support them being used on the Isle of Man. We've all watched those programs, those motorway police programs where they spot somebody who hasn't got insurance or tax and they get nicked and pulled across, or they then speed off and outrun the police cars. How relevant is that to the Isle of Man? I just wonder what your thoughts are, whether or not we have ANPR, whether the DOI are doing it or whether the police are going to get it, and what exactly is it going to be used for? There are some people who say, well, what's the problem? If you're not breaking the law, then it doesn't really matter. However, it does erode a little bit of freedom, doesn't it? Or do we accept that in modern-day society, in July 2024, we really aren't going to be anonymous anymore? In the UK, again, 867, a lot of police cars have ANPR in the vehicle. They're connected to the police computer system so they can spot stolen, untaxed vehicles. As was said last week, use ANPR. Drugs dogs at Liverpool and Heysham to protect our borders. It's too late when the criminals are here, says G. And accidentally sent my last message before I finished it, says Tony C. Police cars in the UK have ANPR so they can spot untaxed, uninsured, stolen cars. Thank you, 867. Thank you, Tony C. We just about got there, didn't we?
Oh, Chester, it was so easy selling all those old valuables all in one go with Vintage Cash Cow. Join over 500,000 people turning watches, jewellery, cameras, gold, silver and much more into cash. Send your items to Vintage Cash Cow, fully insured with free postage. Accept the offer and enjoy the money, or we'll return your items for free. We can go on holiday now, Chester. Visit vintagecashcow.co.uk.
Dreaming of a family adventure? Loganair has you covered with our Kids Fly Fare Free offer. Start planning today. Limited time offer booked by 9th July. T's and C's apply. Children aged 11 and under eligible and must fly with full fare paying accompanying adults. Book today at loganair.co.uk. Loganair, your journey, our joy.
With unlimited broadband from Shaw from £39.50 a month, you'll be laughing.
Shaw Fibre Broadband. It's the lowest price on island. For more details, see us in store or visit shaw.com. T's and C's apply.
Do you know a scrap man? 'Cause I've got scrap to clear. Causing copper, brass and lead, and I need cash for beer.
What? You don't know a scrap man? Gastains of Foxtel is the one for you. Gastains will take all scrap metal and is also licensed for dry cell and lead acid batteries. So don't delay. Ring 801 337 now.
So now we know a scrap man and all our scrap's been cleared. Ring 8 0801 337. Then have cash for vehicle cost. Dice today and get yourself a beer.
Until the 14th of July, you have the chance to win an LG 65-inch TV, courtesy of Waltons. Each week on the Manx Radio Facebook page will be a scrambled footballer's name. All you have to do is identify the person. To enter, tune in each weekday evening to Greatest Hits or Saturday Live, where we will announce a window of opportunity and you will have 5 minutes to text your answer and your full name to 166 177. The winner will be announced on Monday the 15th of July, so keep listening for your chance to win with Waltons and your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
That's to my 24 minutes before 1. Tony B now. Hi, Tony.
How you doing, Andy?
Very well, thanks.
Just a quick one on ANPR. I'm not concerned too much about chasing people on the Isle of Man for tax and insurance, because your tax disc is on your screen, your windscreen over here, so it's obvious who hasn't got tax, because you can just look at it. But my issue would be, how many cars are over here from the UK and have been here for longer than 6 months, and they're not being registered, they're just being driven around. And we don't know who owns those cars. So I think we should have, at the seaport, there should be 2 cameras, which are taking number plates of everything that comes on and goes off the boat. So coming off the boat, we put that in a database. Going back on the boat, we put that in a database. So we know what vehicles are then going back and forwards. And we also know, are they still on the Isle of Man after 6 months? So there isn't, as far as I know, there's no tracking going on for UK vehicles.
No, as you say, I think, isn't it 6 months if you import a vehicle, you have to get it registered and tested within 6 months. Correct.
I've actually done this in the past, and you also have to pay VAT if it's not from the Isle of Man. You've got to, any differential VAT they think you owe them, you've got to pay that first as well, as far as I know. But the issue is, I don't know if those vehicles from the UK are taxed because they don't have tax discs. So my question would be, who and what is controlling that? And the answer seems to be no one, because you can't. But every vehicle that comes off the boat, there's nothing to stop you putting an ANPR camera up there and picking up their number plate.
Well, presumably the Chief Constable must know this.
Well, I would hope he would come on and tell you. But I haven't heard him say that, so you tell me, I don't know. The thing is, it's like on the Isle of Man. If you ask a question, nobody knows the answer in government because they don't want to tell you. So this should all be open and on the web. We should know how many cars you've got over here from the UK that are not registered in the Isle of Man. And they should know that as well. But how can they track it? I don't know. But putting a camera at the boat would also tell them who's coming in and out regularly, and there's a question mark there.
So what about the people who would say, Tony, that sticking ANPR cameras here, there and everywhere, let's say you put half a dozen around the Isle of Man, that's like 1984.
I don't think you need to put them halfway around the island. There's only one place that you bring vehicles in and out, off the boat. So that's the only place you need to have the cameras, because you're not doing it to catch them for not having a tax disc or uninsured or cloned plates. You're simply asking, OK, these people have come to the Isle of Man with a car. Is that car registered on the Isle of Man after 6 months or not? If it's not, then that goes up on the database as, OK, we're looking for this car, keep an eye out.
Right, and leave the
chasing and the videos of the police to somebody else.
And chasing people who don't have road tax, leave that to the parking controllers then.
Yeah, because basically, if you haven't got road tax, you haven't got a tax disc, you haven't got a road licence disc on your vehicle. That's one of the things we kept rather than doing what the UK did, which was get rid of them all. But there's cars coming over here now, and you wouldn't know if they're taxed or not. And if they're not taxed, they're not insured.
Okay, all right. Appreciate that, Tony.
It's just a simple thing to do. You need two cameras, one for going on, one for coming off, and they can be at the entrance to the seaport.
All right. Thanks for that.
Take care, bye.
No, it's 20 to 1 now. I agree with Ewan on ANPR, says a 475 texter. Seems like the thin end of the wedge and an erosion of civil rights, using a spurious argument. Don't forget that deploying it will be an operational matter for the chief constable, not politicians. So heaven knows where the cameras are going to be situated and how many there will be. Camera chameleons in today's papers. Drivers are using fake number plates to avoid being fined. How would that apply to the Isle of Man 272? Why aren't they pushing for an assisted living bill? We are the gloom of man, wasting time and money at the cost of our people who deserve better than the leadership, says Stea, for whom we're currently paying. It isn't good for the Society of the Isle of Man at 775. The café in the Manx Museum isn't open. Where the café is situated, it's presently being used as a pop-up gift shop. Well, there's a big gift shop next to it, isn't there? Anyway, so no cafe at the Manx Museum, our flagship museum, fantastic museum. The National Gallery is brilliant, but no way you can get a decent cup of tea. Just wondering if the sniffer dogs are on duty at the Boatson Airport, says Frank. Are they there permanently or just taken occasionally? If I were a criminal coming to the Isle of Man, I'd hire a car or find a car that's the same as my car and then copy the registration so the car registration recognition wouldn't ping my registration. Does that make sense? Says Paul. I'm assuming you're not a criminal, Paul. I'll take that as read. And it's a good point, 008. The big mistake is that assisted dying won't be available on demand, only for very explicit diagnosis. Others who feel suicidal for other reasons will still get the help they need. They're totally different things, says Sue. I think Peter's point is, and the fact that we're trying to eliminate suicide from the Isle of Man. There is a big problem with suicide in the Isle of Man. Let's not kid ourselves. There is a problem particularly with young men on the Isle of Man. Not to say it doesn't happen with women, but young men are particularly at risk. So Peter's point is one end of government is trying to put together a suicide strategy that will prevent people from taking their own lives, and the other end of government is trying to put together an assisted dying bill that will let people end their lives. Now, whether you call it dying or suicide, wherever the nomenclature that you use, let's just say that they're trying to stop people committing suicide at one end of the spectrum and at the other facilitating spectrum. Now, that was the point that Peter made. I wonder whether you agree with it.
This is the Isle of Man talking, the Mannin Line.
Greetings, Manx Radio listeners. Adam Partridge here, TV auctioneer from BBC Flogget. I'm going to be visiting the island with my team of valuers for a week from Saturday the 6th of July. We're offering free valuations on all areas of antiques and fine art, including paintings, jewellery, silver, watches, coins, medals, ceramics and more. Come and meet us at the Comis Hotel on Monday the 8th of July from 2 till 7pm or get in touch for a free home visit. Don't miss out because by Friday the 14th of June we'll be going, gone. For more information visit adampartridge.co.uk.
Spectrum Windows. If your house needs a new look and your windows let in rain, keep those cold breezes out and make it look like new again. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Quality through and through. Great work guaranteed to you. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Spectrum Windows.
Calling all employers. Are you searching for talent to join your team? Look no further than justthejob.im, the best jobs website for young people on the Isle of Man. Whether you're offering summer jobs, part-time posts, full-time roles, or exciting internships, Just the Job has you covered. And here's the best part. It's absolutely free to use. Justthejob.im. Start posting your vacancies today. Powered by Junior Achievement Together with the Z Zurich Foundation.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a passenger announcement. From Saturday, the Carnaby Street time train will be departing from 8 a.m. for a 2-hour journey to the 1960s with the Isle of Man Railways, with hits, memories and great prizes. Carnaby Street at the new time of 8 a.m.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster Mai, good afternoon. Thanks for joining Manx Radio. Let's go to Mike with us now. Hi, Mike.
Hello there. It's just about the assisted dying. Now, it's obvious people are playing on words. It's two totally different things between suicide of somebody who is not dying and somebody who is terminally ill, is known to be dying, and is suffering a horrible, painful, undignified situation. But the medical profession are not allowed to help them get rid of that pain. Now, I'm not a Christian. Peter Murcott is, and I respect the fact that he believes in Christianity, and that's great. If that's the way he believes. But I would say it is not Christian to allow somebody who's in that much pain, knowing they're not going to get any better. And this has happened to family and friends of mine. Really proud people who are really, I'm trying to think of the right words, undignified.
Yeah.
And in extreme pain, and they're going to die. They know they're dying. My father-in-law's last words to his wife, my mother-in-law, was, "This waiting today is a bastard." That was his last words as he coughed up his insides of cancer. To make people go through that, and he begged and begged the people in the hospice across, not here, to help him end his life. And they said, no, they can't. It's just wrong.
So do you, Mike, do you see this as you obviously see it as a fairly clear-cut decision?
Yes, I do. I agree we've got to have safeguards. But the bill should only be talking about terminally ill people to help them out of their suffering. Then they're going to continue to suffer and suffer and suffer in extreme pain until eventually they do die.
So all the arguments, Mike, about the fact that pain can be mitigated, does that cut any ice with you?
Not at all. I'll go back to my father-in-law again. He had morphine on one of these triggers that you can push to control the pain. He was in extreme pain. The man probably had the highest pain threshold of anybody I know. He was originally a farmer, then he worked in industry, strong as an ox until he got ill. And I say his pain threshold was above the roof. When a snowplough bucket under a lorry fell on his chest, he drove from Yorkshire back to Wiltshire, strapped up with 4 broken ribs. Now, he was in agony, and he was trying to use the morphine, and he actually tried to hold it and keep it held to end his life. And all the alarms went off, and they come ringing and they take it away from him.
So the morphine driver didn't work in this instance. Then he couldn't use it as he wanted.
He could use it to get some assistance from the pain. It didn't stop the pain. But when he tried to use it to end his life, because he was in extreme pain and he'd had enough, and he actually died about 5 days later. So for an extra 5 days, and he'd been suffering before that, he was made to suffer severe agony until eventually his body did give up.
Do you think we should have this? We should have assisted dying on the Isle of Man, Mike?
I certainly do. I want the opportunity myself. I'm starting to get a little bit of ill health, only a tiny bit of ill health at the moment. I don't know what's going to happen. My trade is cancer is common, although I've got no signs of it at the moment. And I don't know. When I get to that stage, I might want to hang on for every last minute. But he was completely compass mentis, as were several of my friends as well who've been through this, and my older friends. Knowing what was happening, and he couldn't end his life, and he hung on in pain, as did several of my friends. Knowing what was happening, knowing they couldn't do anything about it, confined to bed, can't move, can't do anything for themselves, so being cared for by the nurses, and knowing that any minute now I will die, but I've been told it's going to be 1 to 3 weeks' time. Is that Christian to make somebody, and is it even justifiable to make somebody suffer like that? It's disgraceful, and all this, we've been doing on this for 2 years now, and now the Chief Minister wants a referendum. He's got no right in the job, because he was voted in, as all the politicians are, to make decisions, and all they're doing is putting obstacles in the way, and they're playing on words. It's disgraceful.
Mike, everybody can tell this has been a difficult call for you to make, but very worthwhile. We appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
9 minutes before 1 on Manx Radio. This subject isn't going away because it hasn't been legislated on. They're still talking about it. If you want to listen to AM 1368, our Tynwald coverage, you can also hear that in clear sound by going to the website as well. Difficult subject. After 1 o'clock today, remember it's Monday, so we're looking back in the 60th anniversary. It was our birthday at the weekend, by the way. We have 3. That was our middle one. We're going to hear from the renowned Manx politician Ian Anderson talking to David Callister in 1993 about his lengthy career as an MHK and MLC. Ian Anderson, of course, father of David Anderson, himself MHK MLC, but Ian Anderson, and listen for the reference that's made to the Mannin Line. Ian Anderson made specific use of Mannin Line at some point. So tune into that after Mannin Line has finished today. It was interesting also just to... I'm getting so many comments about the anniversary stuff that we're playing, some of the voices that are being brought back from beyond. I can tell you between now and the end of the year, which is when the 60th anniversary finishes, there'll be many, many more programs and so many voices that have come back. Incidentally, people loved hearing Harvey Briggs a wee while ago, and also Jeff Cannell during TT. T.H. Colburn got a lot of comment, as did Charles Carouche, Sir Charles Carouche. Also, a quick mention, this is from Ben, who just said, Andy, one of your former colleagues doesn't get any mentions, and that is a guy called Chris Crookall, who was on Manx Radio in the 1960s. Where is Chris Crookall now? Well, I can tell you 3 things. A, Chris Crookall is the uncle of the current MHK for Glenfaber and Peel, Tim Crookall. I can also tell you he is in Canada, and the third one is not so pleasant. He is not in good health at the moment, but a fine broadcaster, Chris Crookall, still around in Canada, and his nephew Tim, I think, speaks to Chris's son quite regularly.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
I mentioned that tomorrow it's tourism we're talking about. Deborah Heather and Sarah Maltby will be on from Visit Isle of Man. So any questions regarding that, by all means do get in touch. Is it possible to make a living where this is concerned? I mean, a decent living. Is it something you can go into reliably and say, yes, I will go into this? How can the chief exec of Manx Care say it's hard to say if we're getting value for money from the health service, in particular Manx Care? By the end of this year, we're on course to spend £150 million more that was spent by the DHSC in the year that Sir Jonathan Michael's report was written. Waiting lists are back up with 3,000 follow-up appointments outstanding, and Manx Care are wanting more money from Tynwald for Symantec to employ our own consultants to perform yet more operations in our own hospital that they've been doing. But they say they don't know if this is value for money, says Dick. Any thoughts? Thanks to Alex on the phones today. Back tomorrow talking about Visit Isle of Man and tourism.
WINT. 60 years serving you as the nation station. This is Manx Radio.
It's not often that son or daughter follows father into the House of Keys. Of course, our present Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon's father, was an MHK and a minister. Charles Carrouche's family followed his lead. David Cretney is Sarah Maltby's father. And David Anderson followed his father, Ian Anderson. Ian Anderson was a slow-speaking, clear-thinking, much-respected Keys member and MLC. His advice to those making speeches was precise, as were his own contributions. If you don't strike oil in 2 minutes, he used to say, stop boring. He was also the only Tynwald member who, when denied the chance to say what he wanted to, in Tynwald, left the chamber and rang up the Mannin Line. On his retirement from Ledgeco, he spoke with David Collister.
The Department of Industry, it was a wonderful time because at that time I was fortunate to be in it at a time when there was a lot of unemployment. The contribution at that, when we entered in, it was 27 million. When we left the department, it was 42 million 4 years on. Employment had changed completely. There was actually a dearth of people, and it was a time of great satisfaction to be involved in that and to be part of it. And I look on that as probably the best time.
That was a boom time, though. There was a bit of luck involved.
Oh, yes, there was. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I enjoyed the local government board too, although there was a lot of hassle in that.
Now, what was the worst experience in the local government board as it was then?
Well, I don't know. You were always aware that you were never prepared. I remember one Sunday morning coming home and there was 5 cars in the yard waiting for me, people grumbling about what I had done. And coming home and my wife saying to me, she heard in the radio, why did you turn that down? I said, look, I don't want to hear any more about it. I've had it all day. Please leave me.
I couldn't let you forget a famous occasion where you walked out to make your views known on the Mannin Line because you weren't able to speak here.
Yes, I was frustrated. I might have been maybe a bit quick on the draw on that occasion, but I felt I was being ignored, and that's how I felt at the time. It may have been my fault that I took that point of view, and I did feel frustrated. I'm a bit like that. If I've got something on my chest, I've got to get it off, and got to get off there and then.
Part of Island life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.